Hello, I'm Amy White and I'm an employment solicitor in the employment department at Rix Kay. Today we're going to have a think about managing sickness absence, something that can be a real pain for employers but is also deeply unsettling for employees. Let's start by having a think about what you do when an employee calls in sick. The first thing to say is be sympathetic. Ask the employee the reason for their absence and if they have any idea when they might be back to work. Show concern and wish them better. You'll also need to have a think about your sickness absence reporting procedure. It's normal for an employee to be able to self-certify up to 7 days and thereafter have to provide a fit note, also known as a doctor's note. Also have a think about the sick pay provisions that you operate. Most employees are entitled to receive statutory sick pay, SSP, but you might also operate a contractual sick pay policy. So check the employee's contract to find out if they're entitled to any enhanced sick pay and honour any provisions set out therein. So what do you do while an employee is off sick? Well, the first thing to say is stay in contact with them, particularly if a period of sick leave becomes prolonged. While you don't want to pester the employee or be seen to put a pressure on them to return, you need to stay in contact with them to show your concern. It's also a good idea to keep the employee up to date with workplace events. You might, for instance, agree with an employee who's off for a long period that you'll send them your monthly newsletter, for example. Any communication you have with the employee while they're off sick should be recorded and placed on the employee's personnel file so you can refer to it in future. So if you speak to an employee on the phone, take a note of it and put it on the file. So now let's turn our minds to what happens when an employee returns from sickness absence. Lots of employers run return to work interviews, and while they are optional, they are very useful. If an employee's been off for a short period but has taken lots of those types of absences, then sitting down with the employee to find out why there's such a frequency of short-term absence is a good idea. It might be that there's an underlying problem, for instance. It also helps to highlight to the employee the amount of sickness absence they've taken and, if relevant, the pattern to that absence. Equally, if an employee has been off long-term, having a return to work interview gives you as the employer an opportunity to find out whether there are ways you can ease the employee back into work. A phased return, for instance, is a really good way to ease an employee back into work without overwhelming them. Of course, sadly, there will be instances in which an employee is simply too unwell to return to work. And in those sorts of situations, it's really important to keep 3 key things in mind. The first is to be proactive. Take steps at an early stage. Don't allow the situation to drag on unchecked. The second key thing to remember is to consult with the employee. It's important to have at least 2 formal meetings with the employee. Sit down with them and discuss the situation. They might have suggestions as to how they can return to work. They might suggest adjustments to their working pattern or the introduction of a new piece of equipment, for example. The final thing to remember is to obtain medical evidence. If an employer terminates an employee's contract on the grounds of ill health without having obtained medical evidence, that termination is likely to be unfair. So it's really important to obtain a report from the employee's GP or treating consultant. In doing so, you would need to get consent from the employee and the report would be at your cost. But it's a really good guide for an employer who's considering the termination of an employee's employment on the grounds of ill health. Managing sickness absence can be tricky. The absence itself can take a range of forms, and the steps that an employer needs to take to manage it will vary from case to case. So if you need any help with managing a sickness absence procedure, or with any other aspect of employment law, please don't hesitate to contact the employment law team at Rix Kay.